Right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday Bike Club, or should I say bonjour, because yes, we are in France. Yay! So, what are we talking about today? Well, it's going to be quite a convoluted Wednesday Bike Club, so I want to talk to you at the end about what's coming up on Saturday, because that's quite an important episode. It's going to be controversial, I know it will, and I'm going to get a lot of comments about it, but I'll talk about that. Also, I want to talk about the Classic 350 because I've done a few bits on here before I come out, so I've had quite a few new bits fitted. I'm also going to talk about a little bit about some kit that I've got, a foam mount and also a heated jacket, which if I hadn't had a heated jacket, I would have just died yesterday. So, the main crux of it though is talking a little bit about what can spoil a ride. Particularly if you're doing a sort of tour and reasonable distances. It took me two trips to get here, so I split the trip up from home rather than do it in one go. And that's to do with the timings of the boats and everything, and just trying to do 400 miles in one shit, it just wasn't going to happen. So I'm going to be talking about how the first leg of that journey became sort of like a war of attrition. And the second leg was just joyful, and why there was such a difference. So we're heading to Le Roc, and so we can have a talk about that. But I still got to go the long way around because there's still a huge Le Roc in the road from when I was here about 3 weeks ago. All right, come on, let's do that. Otherwise, just get this Wednesday Bike Club's going to take a week. All right, come on. Right, so here we are at Le Roc. God, feels like a long time since I've been here. It's so nice to be in the sun. It's really cold. I'm not saying it's minus anything, but it's like the chill factor is quite surprising actually. But it's lovely as soon as you get out that wind and the sort of the breeze you're making on the bike. It's quite amazing. It's really lovely and warm. So yes, let's crack on with the first bit of this Wednesday Bike Club. Yeah, so it's just really a discussion around how a trip can go slightly not as you want it and can become a bit of a ride of endurance rather than a ride of pleasure. And that doesn't sound quite right coming from me, does it? Anyway, work that one out. So what I did, I split the ride into two legs. So I did from home and then Newhaven, Dieppe Ferry, and then from Dieppe to Le Mans. Now the ride from Le Mans is about 180 miles from Dieppe, a little bit less than that. The problem is that you don't get off the ferry, depending on how the ferries are. That ferry was 11 o'clock in the morning, which meant I didn't actually get into Dieppe till 4 local time. And then by the time you've got off the boat, you're lucky because in a motorbike you get off a bit quick. I was probably on the road by about 20 past 4, which is really good. But then I've got, about 180 miles to do. And the problem is at this time of year, being, the end of March, beginning of April, is that there's not a huge amount of daylight hours. And what I was trying to avoid was riding in the dark, for starters. Now, it's not that I can't ride in the dark, but I'd prefer to ride daylight, particularly when you're on a bike which is a little bit slower, if you're on motorways. And because also I wanted to get to the hotel, I didn't want to be late to the hotel, that you might end up on toll roads, and you don't want to be on a really fast road on a bike that isn't really fast, if that makes sense. So particularly at night, because you become a little bit vulnerable in that, but that's just one of the sort of things that you have to deal with, really. So the problem was that because I'm chugging along sort of 50, 60 miles an hour, I'm looking at 4 hours probably to get to my destination, and you've got to put a couple of stops in there. And what happens is that you're already in a position where you're slightly I want to say tense, but you know your attitude to what you're doing is slightly different. You're not as relaxed because you've put yourself under pressure. That's the word I was looking for, pressure. Because you put yourself under pressure, and it doesn't leave you much room for error. And by that I mean, you know, running low on fuel and all that sort of stuff. And you know, I've said before about it can be a bit of a bugger to get fuel in France sometimes on certain roads. And I did get to that, but I had that issue. So I'd filled the bike up, obviously in the UK, because fuel is actually dearer here than it is in the UK. I think you're paying roughly about €2 a litre for petrol at the moment here in France. You know, luckily that's pretty good on fuel. But there's another thing I'm going to talk about. So getting off the boat, I had about 3 hours, I suppose, in good light. But then the light starts to go, and then it starts to rain a little bit, which I wasn't expecting, you know. And it's not that constant heavy rain; it's that sort of spitty rain, which is constantly, you know, playing with your visor. And you think, do I put my waterproofs on? Do I not put waterproofs on? So in the end, I had to put waterproofs on. And of course, as soon as you put the waterproofs on, it stops raining, doesn't it? So you trap all the water wet inside you. So, and luckily I had I showed that before, that red Bellstaff over waterproof thing, which is such a great wind cheater, because it was getting cold. Now, one thing I did have with me, well, two things I did have, but I didn't need it on the first night. I wore which I'm going to show you in a minute, a new heated waistcoat from Saviour. But I did have my heated gloves on at the time, and I didn't have to switch that on, the waistcoat, because it's actually really warm without it. But the heated gloves I did, and they were absolute must, because when you get wet and you're riding along, it's the water's it's evaporating, and it works a bit like an air conditioning unit. As it evaporates, you get cold. So they were really good. But I got to the hotel at about 8:30, which is sort of the time I planned. So I was really pleased with that. But the thing is, what I found was, by pushing the bike a little, because you end up pushing the bike a bit harder, and I didn't really want to do that. So by putting myself under pressure, putting a time constraint on myself a little bit, that I had to get to the hotel. Because if I'd have been a lot later, then it would have been a bit of a pain trying to get into the hotel, because I'd have had to ring numbers and all that sort of stuff, because it's not a big hotel. And, you know, there's that added stress you get when you do that. Now, talking about petrol, so there's a couple of things I've learned about this bike, is that although it's fantastic, it's reliable and the rest of it, when you start pushing it, it does start to drink petrol a little bit. And one of the reasons for that is that I always said to you before that I've never actually checked, it's run so great, this bike. I wonder if it's got a DNA air filter on it. I did check the other day, and it has got the DNA filter kit on it. So, and I think that does burn through a bit more fuel, particularly when you're pushing the bike on a little bit. I don't know what other people's experience of that is. It's probably marginal, but what I found was I got to about 3 bars on the fuel gauge, and I thought, I had about 70 miles to go, and I thought, well, I should be okay. And the next garage I came to was closed, and it was like, damn. Do you know, that's the problem. That's those little events. Like, now I'm going to get stressed. I'm going to be under stress. Of course, I went another about 20 miles, and then all of a sudden the fuel light came on, and it's blinking. I've gone, wow, I've gone from 3 to 2 to 0. And I think, oh, this isn't good. And I'm thinking, well, okay. Luckily, and I say luckily, out of the blue on the toll road going to Le Mans, there was a fuel station. It was like, wow, and it's one of these new ones. And luckily, I got in there. It was about £400 a litre. It wasn't that bad, but I managed to fill up. And you know, there's that. You know when you're getting under stress, because there's such a huge sense of relief once you've filled up. But I still had the time constraint. You know, I needed to get to that hotel. So, you know, the weather cleared and all the rest of it. So it made an already slightly difficult ride slightly more difficult. Anyway, that was done. We got through that, had a great night's sleep. contrast that with the next day is that the next day I had about 210 miles to do to get from Le Mans to here. And what I could do, the sun was shining, yay. It was still quite chilly, but the sun was shining. I had no time constraint. I had no fuel constraint. I had no time constraint to worry about. My speed could come down. I didn't touch motorways or toll roads. And it made me realise that you can put yourself under unnecessary pressure riding. And it's funny, I saw there were guys on the boat when I got to Dieppe, and you know, I can imagine that the pressure they're under, because they're all riding different sorts of bikes, and riding big groups like that. Now there's safety in numbers, isn't there, a little bit, but I can imagine, you know, some of those bikes, sort of sports bikes, that they need fueling quite quickly and all the rest of it, and that's a pressure, isn't it? And I'm sure they got to where they got without any problems. But having the biggest thing that removes pressure is time. It's time constraint. If you can ride to a destination which is easy mileage and without a time to be there, and that makes a huge difference to actually, because I can remember pulling out that, I pulled out the fuel station. Le Mans quite a big place, and it takes a little while to get out of Le Mans. But once I got out of there, and then I was onto that lovely thing of, you know, little village countryside that you get in France, which is so lovely in France. And I had my music in my ears, and the bike was great, and I had a full tank, and I was just chugging along 45 miles an hour, and just pop it. And that's when you realise that that's so important. Don't put yourself under pressure, particularly when you're on small bikes, because I think you can. The advantage I've found of small bike is that you don't feel the need to really hammer it, because it won't like it, and you don't need to do that. You're wasting fuel, and the fuel consumption improved. My miles per gallon improved by just chugging like sort of 40, 45. And even amazingly in France, even at this time of year, the roads are still quiet. You know, there were times when I had, you know, maybe an hour with nobody on some of those roads. Those small, you know, the small veins of France, those little roads that you get, they're like little veins, aren't they? Apart from the main arterials, you get little veins of roads, and they're so quiet and so lovely. The weather stayed good for me. So I left about 9:30. I had about 210 miles to do. I stopped when I wanted to, but I didn't feel I needed to stop really. I stopped once to refuel, and I got here at about 3:30, I think it was 3:30. So I had a lovely day just riding down, and that's when you realise what a joy these smaller bikes are for touring. If you're staying off the main roads, you really take in everything. I know, as I was riding, you could smell the earth. Do you know what I mean? You could smell the earth of France. It's really strange. You know, lots of farming going on, but you could taste it. It was great. And because you're going so slow, you see everything. So I think that's what I wanted to put across initially on this episode was, you know, what do you like when you go touring? Do you always put that time issue on you, that you've got to get to that destination at that time? And do you realise, or do you find have you realised that's caused you problems? That the beautiful way to tour is to not have a time. Just, you get there when you get there, you know, but give yourself plenty of time, because that's what removes the stress out of it, isn't it, really? I wonder what your thoughts are on that, really. But I had a great day yesterday riding down, and I got here in plenty of time, but boy, was it cold. And on that, here comes a segue now into the first piece of kit, which certainly yesterday when it was cold, been on a bike that many hours, made a huge difference. So let's have a look at that bit of kit now. Right, so this is the first bit of kit I want to show you. So this is from Saviour. Now you remember I had the gloves from Saviour, the heated gloves, and we also had a pair. Remember the pair we had for Karen? They're fantastic. And I will say again, I only like dealing with companies that are just nice people to deal with. And Saviour were really kind to me, because they rushed out those pair of gloves for Karen. which I think are a really nice pair of gloves, and they can be used for normal riding as well, not just because they're heated. But these, again, the Saviour gloves I've been using, and bought them on this trip, and they were absolute godsend. But what they did also send me, again in double quick time, because they said, would I like to try a heated waistcoat? And I said, look, if you can get one out to me before I go to France, I'll take it with me to France. Boy, am I glad I had this. So on the leg that I did from home to Le Mans, I basically only needed this on. I didn't even have to switch it on. But yesterday, on the ride down, which was, a good sort of, quite a lot of hours, I did turn this on. So what's really nice about this, you've got two buttons on here. The battery sits in a pocket inside here. I'll just undo that so I can get the battery out. So it has a battery in there, and this is quite a big battery. It's a much bigger battery, sort of double the size of the one in the gloves, and that just sits inside there. And then you've got two buttons here, and it just says front and back. It's not complicated, is it? Press it, hold it, it goes red, and then you press it once, twice to reduce the actual temperature. Now I found with this on red, when I put it on first, because I'd worn this anyway underneath my coat, wow, did it get hot, sort of instantly. And it was almost too hot, so I had to turn it. No, to save the battery, I just put it on its lowest setting, the same as I've been having on the gloves actually. I just had them on the lowest setting, which is more than adequate. And because it's got an insulating layer, I found this really, really nice. And the other thing I like about it is that it's quite snug. So this is the 2XL. So just so you get an idea, so that's the 2XL, and it's almost, you want it tight, I think, not tight but snug, because you're getting the heat sort of really close to you. The thing is a bit like gloves and like heated grips. The heat radiates out really nicely, but by having the front and back on its lowest setting, it was absolutely perfect. The other thing is it's well made. It's nicely finished. So you could just wear this, in normal situation, really. And you don't have to switch it on at all. The battery sits in there. But I had this on all day yesterday, pretty much. And the battery was no problem whatsoever. The other thing is you got your pockets as well, which is really lovely. But this was a great piece of kit, and I can't thank Saviour enough for this, because it was a bit of a saviour yesterday. It really was. To put this on, because I've got no wind protection on this bike, to put this on, fire it up, I've got my nice big blue coat over the top of it. It was so toasty. It was really nice. So thanks, Saviour. Check the description, because there'll be the link in there to this actual jacket. They are not expensive. They're not expensive. And also you've got the collar and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's a lovely piece of kit, and Saviour are just nice people to deal with, and I get lots of requests for testing kit, and these are the only people I've dealt with on this. I'm not interested in others. These were really good. It was a quick delivery, and I just think it's lovely. It's a lovely kit, Yeah, Saviour heated jacket, and don't forget the gloves. Let's have a look at the bits I've been fitting to the bike, because the bike needed a few upgrades, let's say, because it's done quite a few more. I'm up to about 6,000 miles now, so we needed some new tyres and some other service parts. But I'll show you what I fitted to the bike for this trip in particular, because now this is going to sit in France now for about sort of 6 months. Let's have a look. So the first thing that I did, because it really needed it, was a new chain. So I've now got a DID gold chain on here. Is it X-ring? O-ring, X-ring. Anyway, so I've had a new chain fitted, and also put some new sprockets on at the same time. Complete kit. So the chain that was, I think the sprockets were probably okay, but the chain was just about dead, really. It was at its absolute limit. So after 6,000 miles, and I think you tend to find that those standard fitted chains, just, they're not fantastic, but they'll last to the first major service, I suppose. But I like the DID chains. I think they're really good. So I've gone with that. The big thing that I've done on the bike is I've changed the tyres. So what I've done, I've gone for these Kendras. One slightly on price, one of the reasons, but the Seats which were on here, they'd done 6,000 miles. They're the original tyres, and they still had plenty of tread on. But I just felt that they were going to round up. I think the rear was going to square off, and I didn't want to get here and think, oh, I've got to change the tyres. So we had a look through the catalogues, and I looked for the prices, and I went for these Kendras, and I think these are the same ones that are fitted to the Bear, I think, possibly. But these are really good. These are £160 and then plus the fitting. And I think they look really cool. From the back, I think the bike looks awesome with that tread. It just looked really good. Yeah, I like these, and I would say they were a little bit, I want to say they were hard to start with. You know, when you put fresh tyres on a bike, that you tend to find that they're quite grippy, and the turn and the steering, that you notice that they're new tyres. These aren't like that. But what I found now, I put sort of I don't know, 400 or 500 miles on the bike since I put them on about 4 or 5 days ago. They've really sort of suppled in. They've sort of broken in. It's like wearing a new pair of shoes, and they've been really nice. So yeah, I like those Kendras, and they're good value compared to a lot of bikes. I know that Karen's just had BT46s now fitted to the Hunter, and you're close to 300 quid for that. So they're almost half the price, but there you go. So I'll keep you updated, see how they go. The other thing that I've done, I've changed the panniers now, so they've gone to the Lomos. So I've taken those classic Oxfords off, and I've gone to the Lomos, which I had on the other bike. So that's what I'm going to be using for now with these. I've got my dog bed back. Oh, it's so nice. That's such a great thing. I'm not going to go all the way to Andorra to find one of these again, but this is such a great piece of kit. The other thing that I've done, do you remember I used to tell you that the bloody tank bag gets scratched? It's picked up some terrible scratches, this tank. And it was from this tank bag. And I thought, that's a real nuisance. But what I've done, I put these stickers on the bottom. It's okay at the top. I'm not getting scratches at the top, but it's the scratches at the bottom that was doing it. So I think they might polish out. And I think, do you know what I think the thing is? I think the Enfield tanks are probably not that thickly painted, because that's not a cheap bag at the end of the day, but that seems to work. So I still get a little bit of sticky at the bottom, but it's the top, and that stayed put. So that's what I've done with that. So yes, as it is now, she seems in fine fettle. Right, this was the other piece of kit I wanted to show you. So this is the GR Explore. Now I know a lot of people use the quad lock, and quad lock is just everywhere, isn't it, really? But you know me, I like to support the underdog. But GR Explore asked if I wanted to have a look at their unit, and I said, oh yeah, because as you know, I tend to have the phone and the Chiggy on here, but it means I've got a phone and a unit in here, and I thought, well, maybe I just want a phone really, because I've got an older spare iPhone which I can use. So they said, well, we'll send you 2 units out. So they sent me this one, and I'll show you the other in a sec. The thing with this one is that it's ball mounted, which means it's the same as my camera mounts. So I can flip between the two. So I can have this and a camera on here if I want, so which is really nice. So one of the reasons why I went for it. The other thing this does, obviously in tune with lots of other units like this, it's got the anti-damper or the damper mount, which is great. And I could see that working when I was riding up here the last couple of days. It really does work. Because anybody that's tried to fit standard things like sat navs and stuff to motorbikes, which are motorbike specific, it rattles them to death, and I've done that many times. The other thing this has got, which has got the anti-theft on it, this is the MT6. It's got an anti-theft on it, so you can turn that, but it won't undo the ball mount. You've got a special key that goes in there, and you just rotate it. So really nice. The other thing I like about this is that it's all aluminium. It's really well made. The other thing, the reason I like this compared to the quad lock, and somebody can tell me whether that is different or not, is that the mount system, which obviously goes onto the phone, that's it, and it's ready to go. There's no, I think when you look at the quad lock, doesn't the quad lock require you to twist it? I'm not sure about that, but this doesn't. It locks in there perfectly, and you've got the small lever at top, so you push that in and you just pull it out. So you can see how that works. So when you actually push the phone onto it, it does that, and then the little tangs come out, and it's that which unlocks it. So that's what I like about it. It's instant lock, and it goes on and off. So there's no messing around with this. There's no that little twist afterwards. You don't have to worry about that. It just goes on and click. So that's what I liked about it. The other thing was that I think it's a lot cheaper than the quad lock. I have heard people say that you can pay up to £100 on quad lock when you get all the bits that you want, where this comes complete. And I'll put the price up on the screen. There is a discount code for these, but I just think it's a good price. I think this MT6 works out probably about £60, maybe a little bit less than that, but that's it. The nice thing, obviously, with the putting on the Enfield is that I've got my USB, which is underneath here, and then it just plugs into the side there. But that's solid. That's not going anywhere. That fitted directly to. I had a sticker on the back of here, because they do say you don't really want to put it directly onto the back of the phone. You should put it on a case. But I had no problem with that, and it just worked lovely. What a cool piece of kit! So that's the MT06 or the MT6, and then you've got the more standard one without the anti-theft on it. So you've just got the sort of more basic unit, but I think they're really interesting. You've got the damper on there, but they're both quick released, and they come with everything you need. You don't need anything else. Whatever phone you got, that will fit, and that's what I like about it. So do look on my in the description, and there'll be a link to these. But I just thought sometimes, that some companies sort of corner the market, and they get a little bit complacent, and sometimes it's nice when you see something else coming along and they actually sort of improve on it, possibly. I'll probably get shot down in flames in that by quad lock. But I just think that's a really nice mount system. There's no... It sort of finds its centre. You don't need to shuffle it around. There's none of this sort of thing going on or anything. You don't have to worry about that. It's just there and ready to go. So cool piece of kit. Check it out. GR Explore. Right, so what do I... It's like I feel like I should warn you what's coming up next Saturday. So, last week, there was a few YouTubers, they call them content creators, YouTubers, were invited down to Superbike Factory, up to Superbike Factory at Donington. I suppose it depends what part of the country you come from, doesn't it? And it was actually, they're changing some of their practices and the way they do things and the bikes they're buying in and all sorts of stuff. But I found it a really fascinating trip. And first thing I want to say is I wasn't paid for that. The people that are doing well, as far as I know, nobody else was paid for it. But it was for me, it was like a peek behind the curtain, and it was really, really fascinating. And although the whole idea of inviting people up was to talk about what they're doing to improve the business and change the business, I suppose. They got some new policies that they're doing, which I think people will find quite surprising. But what they also allowed me to do, which that wasn't what the idea of it for them, but was they allowed me to ask questions and sit down with one of the managers there and talk about some of the criticisms and how they've been addressing those, and just talking a little bit more in depth about Superbike Factory and how the way they're going forward. Now, I know Superbike Factory is one of those subjects which is very divisive, and a lot of people just won't have anything to do with them, and But there's also a huge lot of people that that have done very well with Superbike Factory. So what I'd like you to do when you do watch it is just watch it with an open mind, and do watch it to the end, because there's some other interesting stuff that I talk about when I sort of finish. I do a little ride and I finish the episode. So it's probably going to be longish, that episode, but do watch it, and do let me know what you think. Try not to be too rude to me. But yeah, I think you will find that interesting, that episode. And it was certainly an eye-opener for me in what they're doing up there. And I'm interested in your thoughts on it. But just to reiterate, I wasn't paid for any of that. I'm not in the pay of Superbike Factory. To me, it was just an interesting look at how a business works. And obviously to pass across the information that they were trying to get across. So I hope you enjoy that. And I hope you enjoyed today's Wednesday Bike Club. I know there was a lot in it, but there we go. Right, look after yourselves, and I will see you on Saturday. Take care.